All right, so that's apologetics and theology. What about apologetics and philosophy, right? And so they tell us that the different views of philosophy characteristic of the four major approaches are, to some extent, a reflection of the fact that the meaning and scope of philosophy has changed over the centuries. Many 20th century philosophers, for instance, prefer to understand philosophy as a method of analysis and critique, and not as kind of the older approach where it was a systematic view of reality. And so the problem here, they say, with these four approaches to philosophy is that they all assume an all or nothing point of view, right? Some ideas in non-Christian philosophy happen to be true, and here the classic approach can proceed on safe ground. But other ideas here are, of course, wrong, and reform apologists and feidists are right to criticize them. So some methods of reasoning may be useful and reliable, and other methods may not be. And so that what they're suggesting here is you don't need to take an all or nothing approach with regard to apologetics and philosophy.
Right. Well, how about Christianity and science? Well, various philosophers of science have observed that there are four basic models of relationships between science and religion, or science and theology. Ian Barber describes them as conflict, independence, dialogue, and integration. And I'll just again point to Zondervan's Counterpoint series, because they do have a book that focuses on this type of distinction between them among the authors.
Yeah. Oftentimes you see this whole idea of Christianity and science as a conflict, right? This is probably the most popular view of it, right? They're fighting with each other.
Right.
But what Barber suggests is no, that you can also have a position that says they're independent from each other, that science looks at the world, the empirical world, and that sort of thing, and Christianity, or religion is what he calls it, looks at, spiritual or things, or perhaps values, right? So you get this dichotomy of fact value. Science deals with facts and religion deals with values. So they're independent of one another, right? Mm-hmm. Now, we don't necessarily buy that, but that's how he describes this independence view. Mm-hmm. The dialogue view basically is that they can talk with each other, that they're dealing with, various aspects of the world, but they can still communicate with each other. And of course, the integration view says that you can put them both together, that they're giving us a picture of the whole world. And so they both can be integrated, right? And so he gives us kind of four perspectives on how Christianity and science, might be related to one another. And so what our authors here tell us is that the all or nothing assumption characteristic in the debate over philosophy and apologetics is also evidence within science as well. Almost all of the apparent conflicts between science and theology are really between what some scientists and some theologians say. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's not science isn't conflicting with theology, but some scientists are conflicting with some theologians and vice versa. And so what they tell us is that this means that some scientific theories really do conflict with Christian teachings. So that it's not all that they're all non-conflicting. There are some conflicts, mm-hmm. and they tell us the fetus is right to suggest that some scientific theories deal with questions of a different type than theology. But this way of handling apparent conflicts goes only so far. Where there is a real possibility of conflict, they tell us, there's also a real possibility of agreement and therefore of confirmation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so this all or nothing assumption, you don't have to, go with that approach, right? There's truth in science, obviously, and so you don't have to throw it out.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that's where kind of presuppositions says you can use science as long as you can justify it. Even those who aren't able to justify it can actually use it because of the origin of where science stems itself from. But then if you look at something like the solid state of the universe that was popular before Big Bang moved it out. That would definitely conflict with Genesis 1 in any detail. And so if you had someone who's a stickler for science that says, oh, science has proven that it's only a solid state because of all these things. Well, then once the paradigm have shifted and the revolution occurred, and now we have the new paradigm of the Big Bang Theory, now there's less contention there. And so, I think this book has talked about, we talked about it with Mitch Stokes's How to Be an Atheist, which is an excellent book. We sometimes should take a step back and say it's not what science says, but it's what scientists say. And a lot of times, if you wait 20, 30, 50 years, all those scientists will have been revolted against and now have to learn about things like 333 degrees of dimensions. So all that stuff.